Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, where teachers can save 5% every day. Download the Safeway app and verify your teacher status for exclusive offers and discounts. Get started at Safeway.com or in the Safeway app.
If you happen to be one of those Coloradans who actually owns an umbrella, it's a good idea to keep it handy this week. Along the Front Range, there's a decent chance of rain every day for the next several days. If that rain keeps you indoors, consider cozying up with the latest episode of the Colorado In-Depth podcast from CPR News. It just dropped, and it's about the push for and against geothermal energy in Colorado. I'm Bazi Kanani. Coming up, the final sprint at the state capitol.
There have been long days, but I feel like the session has gone by really fast.
What new laws might get passed before the end of session deadline? Then, a teen who threw rocks at cars is on trial. Will a jury decide on murder or manslaughter?
They still, at that age, have an immature prefrontal cortex that has difficulty controlling and regulating their emotion.
And a swan song for a beloved Denver band.
We had a lot of talks about it where we're like, why are we doing this again?
It's Wednesday, April 23rd. Here's the news in Colorado today. Just like many students this time of year, Colorado lawmakers are cramming. In just 2 weeks, they'll wrap up the year's legislative session. With that adjournment deadline looming, there are still a number of significant bills they hope to get passed on issues including workers' rights, immigration enforcement, and tech company regulations. They may also face more vetoes from the governor. We pulled CPR's public affairs reporter Benta Berglund away from the hustle and bustle at the state capitol just long enough to fill us in. Benta, what's it like over there in this final stretch?
The schedule gets crazy. I say it's very fluid. This is the time of year when lawmakers can start suspending rules so committees can meet at the last minute. Lots of late nights, more caffeine intake. Colorado's legislative session is 120 days, so there's a hard deadline. There's hundreds of bills lawmakers have been working on that will ultimately pass, and they get a lot done. People would say for better or worse.
Is it too soon at this point to say whether this has been an especially productive or successful legislative session?
That's always going to depend on who you talk to. Even members from within the same political party will have very different ideas on just how successful a session was, depending upon their personal priorities. And then we may not know until years later when we look at how laws are implemented. And I will say lawmakers did the one thing they are constitutionally required to do. That is to pass a balanced budget. It was bipartisan, and it wasn't easy this year. They had to close a $1.2 billion gap. And lawmakers really relied on a lot of smaller fees, kind of that analogy of rummaging through the couch cushions. And I did talk to the chair of the Joint Budget Committee, Jeff Bridges, about this. He's a Democratic senator, and that group really crafts the budget.
The biggest unknown for the economy next year is the federal government. We have no idea what they're going to do to the economy. We have no idea what they're going to do to grant programs that the state depends on. We have no idea what they're going to do to Medicaid. And the state gets about $300 million a week in federal funding across the state.
So still a lot of concern about what's to come, but more immediately in these next 2 weeks, what are some of the main things they're still hoping to get done?
There are a lot of big priorities for Democrats. There's bills to protect rights for transgender Coloradans. One measure would require insurance to cover transgender care, and another would expand civil rights protections. Those are both pending in the Senate. Another big Democratic priority is a bill that would make it easier to form unions. And this was introduced at the very start of session. The governor opposes the bill. He said he wants Democrats to work with the business community and come up with a compromise. Business and labor are still at an impasse. Democrats are also pushing for an immigration bill, and this would expand restrictions in state law now on how Colorado can work with ICE. And I talked to Democratic Senate President James Coleman about that bill.
I'll say I don't know if the governor is in a position or a mindset to veto the bill, but I don't know if he's in full support of the bill as it is right now. I think that he's very appreciative in the conversations we've had of all the changes that have been made. And I think we're getting closer to that place where he can be supportive.
Coleman mentioned vetoes there. Governor Polis has already vetoed one bill. What are some of the others that could be coming?
Yes, he already vetoed a bill that would extend deadlines for the public for open records requests. And Polis is expected to veto this sweeping social media bill. And that's one that would require companies to better enforce and track illegal activity on their sites. So things like gun sales and drug sales. Those both pass with wide support. But overriding a veto is a whole different thing, and it's a different calculation, especially for lawmakers within his own party to do that public pushback to a governor. And also, the clock is ticking. Session ends May 7th. There's a lot to do, and any of these things take up precious time, and that is in a very rare commodity now.
And that also means there will be a lot of reporting still to happen in these next 2 weeks. Thank you, Bento. We'll be sure to send you some extra coffee.
I appreciate that. Thanks for having me.
A family lost a daughter when teenagers threw a rock at her car in 2023. 2 of those teens have pleaded guilty, but the third teen is now on trial. Joseph Koenig was 18 years old when the rock killed 20-year-old Alexa Bartell while she was driving to her girlfriend's house near Golden. Koenig is facing 18 charges in addition to first-degree murder. CPR reporter Haley May is following it all in a Jefferson County courtroom. Haley, can you bring us up to speed on this trial? What did the defense say yesterday?
Defense attorney Thomas Ward says the teens threw the rocks with the intention of hitting cars, not people. He says they did not know what they were doing would result in Bartell's death, and that part of that is because of their age.
And the prosecution?
The prosecutor, Catherine Decker, has said that Koenig did know what he was doing and that by throwing rocks at moving vehicles, he and his friends were likely to hurt someone.
The defendant's attacks were frequent. His targets were focused, and the weapons he used were fatal.
There are 2 other teenagers involved in this case. Who are they?
His co-defendants are Nicholas Karolchik and Zachary Kwok. Each of them took a plea deal last year, and they'll serve shorter sentences in exchange for cooperating with prosecutors. As part of that deal, both men testified against Koenig last week, and they claim he was the one who threw the rock that killed Bartell. They also talked about Koenig celebrating when they heard the rock hit her windshield.
These types of trials can be difficult for those who are listening to them. The jury heard from multiple people who were affected by the teens' actions, including Bartell's mom.
That's right. Yeah, Kelly Bartell took the stand and she shared her last moments with her daughter before hearing about her death.
I mean, we always said I loved you and we spent so much time together, but something just pulled me that night. So I went back. She was in her room and I just said, "Hey, I love you." And I gave her a hug.
That testimony was at the beginning of this trial. It's been going on for about a week now, and the defense is just getting started.
That's right. Yeah, the defense has called its first expert witness. Yesterday, attorney Thomas Ward had Lawrence Steinberg on the stand. He's a leading expert on adolescence, and he's testified in multiple criminal cases against teenagers. His job was to explain to the jury why someone around the age of 18, like Koenig was, might engage in more risky behavior while not thinking about long-term consequences.
They still, at that age, have an immature prefrontal cortex that has difficulty controlling and regulating their emotions.
But the prosecutor wasn't totally buying that all of that applies to Koenig. She really held the expert witness's feet to the fire today. She mainly asked questions that proved how difficult it is to know when a brain has made the switch from adolescent to adult.
Haley, how long do you expect this trial could be?
Well, the trial is set to continue through next week. If Koenig is found guilty of first-degree murder, he could face life in prison without the possibility of parole. The defense, however, is asking for them to find him guilty of manslaughter, which would be a lesser charge. Now, a judge will sentence both Carol Chick and Kwok in early May after Koenig's trial ends. Kwok, who the defense says threw the rock, is facing the least amount of time, up to 32 years. Carol Chick could face up to 72 years.
Thanks, Haley.
Thank you.
A Denver duo is hanging up their hats.
Honestly, this is a young man's game. I don't care what you say.
Elena Moore and Patrick Riley are the voices and minds behind the band Tennis. And they're also married.
We're really trying to avoid using the language breakup because people immediately panic and think our parents are breaking up, getting a divorce, but no, we're fine.
Tennis grew a dedicated fan base after writing their first album, Cape Dory, while living together on a sailboat. 15 years later, they've decided that the seventh album will be their last.
We did have the energy for one last album that at least both of us could stand behind and not phone in.
The new album is titled Face Down in the Garden.
If the toast would ever happen.
We actually didn't want to write this album, but we had a lot of talks about it where we're like, why are we doing this again? But we were just like, the songs are there, they want to be written. And it really we kept saying it feels like the concluding thought.
Moore started writing the album's first track on the way home from their last tour.
We had this very cursed trip home at the end of tour where we blew through all the tires in our van and then one of our trailer tires.
Counted 12 blown tires and under a mile.
I just kind of fell into this reverie, reminiscing about all of these near disasters of tours past, but then you can't help but compare them to those insane highs that you had just had the moment before or the moment after.
And all that misadventure brought up all kinds of memories about the beginning of their marriage and early days together as a band.
I have been working for a while comparing my ship's log from our voyages with our tour diary, seeing the world pass by through a window. Also feels really similar to sitting in the cockpit watching the waves go by, and it's just kind of permanent changing scenery. And I think we're just wondering what is driving us to these things. And I feel like I could spend a lot of time exploring that, but I need some distance.
Tennis has been central to their relationship. They started the band shortly after their wedding day. Now they'll get to see what life feels like without the band.
Honestly, one of the motivations for taking a break is just getting to rediscover what is our marriage outside of the backdrop of this big looming project, this endeavor that we've had going since the year we got married.
You can hear the full interview with Tennis on the Colorado Matters podcast.
Looking for a stone in a dust pile. Counted 12 blown tires and under a mile.
Thanks for listening to Colorado Today. Be sure to tap follow in your podcast app. And if you hear a story or episode you love, share it. I'm Bazi Kanani. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, where pharmacists can fill your pet's prescriptions, helping you pamper and protect your pet with pills, peanut butter, toys, and treats. Stop into the store today or visit Safeway.com.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.